Imagine a man in ancient UR. He needs 30 jars of sesame oil. He reaches into a leather pouch and pulls out a handful of silver chunks. Irregular shapes. No markings. No stamps. Just raw metal. The oil merchant picks up a piece. Turns it over. Frowns. How much does it weigh? Is it really silver? Or has someone mixed in lead? Who cut this piece, and can they be trusted? The merchant sighs. Every single transaction starts the same way. Not with a handshake. With a scale. This is the story of the age of metals. Humanity found an almost perfect material for money. Almost. Because there was one problem it could not solve. And that problem would haunt every marketplace for the next 2,000 years. In the last episode we met the world's first monies. Shells. Salt. Cattle. We discovered the 4 properties that make a commodity work as money: durability, divisibility, portability, and scarcity. Every commodity money that humanity tried scored well on some of those properties. But none scored well on all 4. Then people started pulling things out of the ground. And everything changed. Why did metals beat shells, salt, and cattle? The short answer: metals score higher on all 4 monetary properties than any organic commodity. Let us go through them one by one. Durability. Bury a piece of silver. Come back 1,000 years later. It is still a piece of silver. Shells chip. Salt dissolves in rain. Cattle die. Metals just wait. Divisibility. You can melt a silver bar and pour it into 10 smaller pieces. The total weight does not change by a single gram. Now try dividing a cow. Half a cow is not worth half, it is worth nothing, because it is dead. Portability. A handful of silver could buy what would have required an entire cart of grain. A gold ring on your finger could represent a year's wages. You could carry your entire fortune on your person. Scarcity. You cannot grow silver in a field. You cannot breed gold in a stable. Metals are hard to find, hard to extract, and impossible to manufacture. Supply is limited by nature. And that protects their value. And here is something curious. Karl Menger, founder of the Austrian School of Economics, argued that metals won because of their superior salability. That is, the combination of all these properties made them the easiest substance on earth to exchange. Karl Marx, writing from a radically opposing perspective, reached the same conclusion. Gold and silver became universal money because of their durability, relative indestructibility, and the fact that they do not oxidize. 2 thinkers who agreed on practically nothing agreed on this. When Marx and Menger nod at the same time, you know something is true. Let us travel to the place where metallic money was born. Mesopotamia. The land between the Tigris and Euphrates, in present-day Iraq. By around 2500 BCE, and possibly earlier, silver was already functioning as money in the Sumerian cities. Not as coins. Not as stamped discs. Just weighed pieces of silver, valued by their mass. You are probably thinking, wait, that word sounds familiar, shekel. It does, yes. But the original shekel was not a coin. It was a unit of weight. Approximately 8.4 grams of silver. The word comes from the Akkadian siklu, first documented around 2150 BCE. The Mesopotamians built their monetary system on their base 60 mathematics. 1 mina equaled 60 shekels. 1 talent equaled 60 minas. That is 3,600 shekels, about 30 kilograms of silver. To give you a sense of scale, the Code of Hammurabi, around 1800 BCE, set the annual wage of an unskilled laborer at about 10 shekels of silver. That is about 84 grams. Less than what a modern smartphone weighs. A year's labor. In the palm of your hand. That is portability. And there is a revealing detail in the language itself. In Hebrew, the word kesef means both silver and money. In Babylonian, kaspu means exactly the same, silver and money. The language fused the 2 concepts because they were the same thing. There was no need to distinguish them. If you had silver, you had money. If you had money, you had silver. And here is something fascinating. Students at Babylonian scribal schools, around 2000 BCE, were already training in financial mathematics. Their exercises posed a question that sounds very modern: if a debt accumulates interest at 1/60th per month, how long does it take to double? The answer: 60 months. 5 years. The Babylonians invented financial mathematics 4,000 years before Wall Street. But there is an important detail. Not everyone used the same shekel. In southern Mesopotamia, 1 mina was 60 shekels. In the Syro-Palestinian region, 50. Among the Hittites, 40. The weight system was a patchwork. And if you were trading between regions, you had to know which standard the other person was using. Otherwise, you were being cheated. Now let us travel south. To the Nile. A woman walks through a market in Thebes. She is looking for linen. And her money? She carries it stacked on her arms. Gold rings. Dozens of them. In Egypt, a different metallic tradition took hold. Gold, not silver, was the prestige metal. Egypt had abundant deposits in the eastern desert and in Nubia. Gold became central to religious life, royal power, and everyday commerce. The Egyptians used gold rings, bars, and beads as money. The standard unit of weight was the deben, approximately 90 grams. Rings served as convenient fractions of a deben. Archaeological finds from El Amarna, the capital built by Pharaoh Akhenaten around the 14th century BCE, include ingots and metal rings that represent some of the earliest physical evidence of the Egyptian monetary system. The elegant thing about gold rings was that you could wear your money. Your wealth traveled on your body. No bag. No cart. Just rings stacked on your arms. Try doing that with cattle. But the same question haunted Egyptian merchants as it did Mesopotamian ones. When someone hands you a gold ring, how do you know what it actually weighs? How do you know it is pure gold and not an alloy with copper? That question never went away. Here is where things get really interesting. On the other side of the world, China took a completely different path. No weighing shapeless lumps of metal. The Chinese cast bronze into recognizable forms. And not just any forms. They made money shaped like knives. And money shaped like spades. Miniature tools. During the Zhou dynasty, roughly 1045 to 256 BCE, two extraordinary forms of money emerged. Knife money. Bronze pieces shaped like small knives or scrapers, modeled after the chouette and everyday bronze scraper. They circulated from approximately 600 to 200 BCE. Spade money. Flat bronze pieces shaped like miniature agricultural hoes, used in various Chinese states during the same period. Why knives and spades? Scholars believe these shapes derived from real tools that were already used in barter. A knife had practical value. A hoe had practical value. When people began exchanging tool-shaped tokens instead of actual tools, they were making an enormous conceptual leap. The shape signaled value, even though the object was too small to cut anything. And this was not a cottage industry. At the Guanzhong foundry site, archaeologists found more than 2,000 production waste pits. 2,000. This was money manufacturing on an industrial scale, between roughly 640 and 550 BCE. A money factory, 2,500 years before the modern mint. Metals were a brilliant monetary material. Durable. Divisible. Portable. Scarce. Better than anything that had come before. But there is a twist. Metals had a problem that shells and cattle did not. They could be faked. A cowrie shell is a cowrie shell. You can see it with your eyes. A cow is obviously a cow. But a piece of silver might be pure, or it might be silver on the outside and lead on the inside. A gold ring could be alloyed with copper. To the naked eye, you cannot tell. Every transaction in metal came down to two questions. First, how much does this weigh? Second, what is it actually made of? The first question had a solution. The balance beam scale. Archaeological evidence from the ancient Near East shows that precision weighing technology developed in parallel with metallic money. Merchants carried sets of standardized hematite weights, calibrated to the shekel standard, to verify silver payments on the spot. But the second question, purity, was much harder. You could scratch the metal against a touchstone and compare the color of the streak. You could weigh it against water to check density. These methods worked, but they were slow, imperfect, and required real expertise. And fraud was rampant. Mesopotamian sources are full of complaints about adulterated silver and rigged weights. If you could shave a tiny amount off every piece of silver that passed through your hands, or mix in a cheaper metal, you could profit at everyone else's expense. The oldest scam in the world. This was the gap. The gap between a good monetary material and reliable money. Silver was excellent. But every transaction still required weighing, testing, and trusting. The material was right. The system was not yet complete. Think about the last time you paid your rent. A bank transfer. 10 seconds. Done. Neither you nor your landlord stopped to weigh anything, test anything, or worry about fraud. Now imagine paying that rent in raw silver. You put a pile of chunks on the table. The landlord pulls out a scale. Then a touchstone. Then you argue about whether your silver is really 90% pure or 85%. Exhausting, right? Well, that was everyday life for thousands of years. The peoples of Mesopotamia, Egypt, and China had found the right material. Metal was superior to everything before it. But they were trapped in a world where trust had to be rebuilt from scratch in every transaction. Think about a farmer who sold their entire harvest, months of work under the sun, and received adulterated silver in return. They did not know. They had no way of knowing. When they tried to spend that silver, the next merchant rejected it. An entire year's labor evaporated. That was the real human cost of the verification problem. That exhausting reality, the constant weighing, the constant testing, the constant suspicion, is what drove the next great innovation. People did not just need a good monetary material. They needed a way to guarantee it. 1. Metals score highest on all four properties of money. 2. The shekel was a weight, not a coin. 3. Every metallic transaction required weighing and purity testing. 4. A good material is not enough. Money needs a trust system. For ideas to take away from this episode. First, metals won the competition. They score highest in durability, divisibility, portability, and scarcity. Marx and Menger, two of the most opposed economic thinkers in history, agreed on this. Second, the Mesopotamian shekel was not a coin. It was a unit of weight. Silver money was weighed silver, cut into chunks, with no standardized shape. Third, the verification problem was real and persistent. Every transaction required scales, weights, and specialized knowledge. Fraud was common and hard to detect. Fourth, finding the right material was not enough. The distance between a good monetary material and reliable money is the distance between having silver and having a system that makes that silver trustworthy. Metal was better than shells or cattle. But every transaction required weighing, testing, and trusting. What if someone could simply stamp a piece of metal and guarantee its value? What if you could walk into a market and buy anything without weighing, without testing, without arguing? Around 630 BCE, someone did exactly that. In a kingdom in western Anatolia, beside a river that literally carried gold, a ruler pressed his seal onto metal and told the world, "This piece weighs what I say it weighs. This metal is what I say it is. Trust me." And the man who made it possible became so rich that we still use his name as a synonym for wealth 25 centuries later. That is next time.